Welcome to Tuesday Talks with Darleen, and I'm really excited because I have Agatha Brewer from Agatha Brewer Coaching. Now, she actually works with new entrepreneurs to help them launch businesses that make a bigger impact on the world. And Agatha combines 15 plus years of digital marketing experience and her coach training to help new business owners move their ideas out of their heads into reality, getting them clarity around what they want to create, helping them set the right strategic foundations, and unraveling any mindset blocks that are standing in the way. And Agatha is, even though she's got that amazing experience, fairly new to business, but already, she's got a lot of recent experience going through similar stuff herself in terms of moving through fear while launching a business. And that is what we're going to talk about today and that's one thing that, many, many business owners don't realize there's so many fears that come up when you start a business. So welcome, Agatha.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And so first off, I'd love to know how you actually discovered the fears that came up for you.
So I'll start off with a little bit of why I became a coach, because that may kind of help
Yeah.
explain
Yeah.
some context. So, I had been working in marketing for over 15 years at that point in the corporate world. And I also had been dealing with my own chronic invisible illness.
Mhm.
And in the process of trying to heal myself from that illness, I
Mhm.
discovered something called neuroplasticity,
Mhm.
which is a sciencey word, I
Mhm.
know, but it's basically the belief that your brain can change. And there's a lot to it. I'm not a doctor, so I won't, give you all of the background, but there was a program I did that was based in neuroplasticity called DNRS. And I learned about fear, and I learned about limiting beliefs, and I learned about the patterns that I was subconsciously creating in my own brain
Mhm.
that were stopping me from healing, or at least feeling better in the moment,
Mhm.
and like dealing with the illness. So during that process, I did these like daily retraining exercises for 3 years. So during that process, I really got into limiting beliefs and learning
Mhm.
more about the brain. And that's when I decided to become a coach, because I wanted to help other people kind of transform their own
Mhm.
negative thought patterns. And these are things that, unless you're like tuned into them, you don't always realize what you're telling yourself. And so I had to do a lot of my own healing and retraining of rewiring my own brain in that program. But then when I launched my business, I realized that I had fixed, healed, cured, a lot of those negative thought patterns related to my health, or like what I was capable of in the world. But then all these things started coming up in my business about these doubts that I was having, or fears, or things like that. And so I kind of had to kind of take that training that I had learned and apply it to myself and to my own business. And so through working with other people and my peer coaches and my own training, basically, I didn't think that I would become a business coach, but it kind of happened because I have so much marketing and experience that people just naturally started coming to me. But I was also helping them with not only their marketing, but also their mindset, because that's such a huge component of being a business owner. And you don't always realize it when you're first getting started. That's usually something that people are kind of surprised about, that they have like mindset issues. But it's not always just your marketing or your strategy that's messed up. It's actually your mindset. So now I combine the two with the people that I work with.
I love that. And I totally agree about mindset because when I started business, what was mindset? Like, hello, I'm good. I can start a business. I can do stuff. And then,
Yeah.
oh, hang on. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it can kind of creep up on you. And especially, I find that the people that I work with, a lot of the people who come to me, they're more on the like introverted side,
Mhm.
or maybe an ambivert like me. They're not
Mhm.
always extroverts, because I feel
Yeah.
like for extroverts it kind of comes a little bit easier,
Mhm.
because they're just naturally used to talking about themselves. And
Mhm.
so they're like, in my mind, my opinion obviously, but like they're kind of natural
Mhm.
business owners, entrepreneurs. But the people who are a little bit more I wouldn't say shy, but, people who like to stay inside and don't network too much just in their normal life, it can be a little bit scary to put yourself out there. And so I like helping that group of people. I work with all groups of people. I don't want to single them out, but that's just the types of people that I feel are drawn to me.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with I'm an ambivert as well. So I love, I do love networking and that, but then it's like, okay, enough. I need to go in my space again.
Go hide in my shell. I'm a Cancer too, so like I have that
Oh,
like protective thing going on.
yeah. And for me, when I started a business, I was still in the healthcare field. So it was actually harder for me to market because there was things I couldn't say. Because at that stage I was in, the healing field and I was doing that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it was really interesting what came up for me around that. And so I'd love to know, because you were talking about the 7 steps of fears or something, and I'd love to know
Yeah, there were
all
just
about that.
some tips that I
Mm,
wrote down. It's not
mm,
necessarily steps, but I kind of want to explain to the audience like the innate fears that we
mm,
have. And this is not
mm,
something I came up with. I want to credit the person who created that program, Annie Hopper. She created the dynamic neural retraining
mm.
system. But when I learned about this, I was like, oh, that's why I have this fear. So I think
Yeah.
it's really helpful.
Mm,
So basically, there's 2 types of innate fear that every human feels. And these are basically hardwired into our brain to help protect us. So they're
mm,
not really going to go away
mm,
completely. So that's why they keep coming up.
mm,
But in people who have what I had, limbic system impairment, basically that fear continues to keep going and it is triggered when it's not really supposed to be
mm,
triggered all the time.
mm,
So I'll explain it so it makes more sense. So the first one is around your safety and your health,
mhm,
and the second one is around your community or tribe. So
mm,
even if you don't have like an impairment in your limbic
mhm,
system, which is the part of your brain that controls the fight or flight response, which you probably have heard of, um, these things can still be triggered. So around
mhm,
safety and health, basically, our brain, just any natural, like healthy person,
mhm,
our brain is constantly scanning the environment to see if there's any threats. Because a long time ago, like there were a lot more threats in our daily life. There were bears, there were tigers, there were lions. I'm exaggerating, but there were. And we had to be aware of our environment, right? And then the other one is community and tribe, which is where, the fear of rejection comes from, or in an entrepreneur's sense, imposter syndrome. Like we want to feel like we are part of a tribe, part of a community, because that again is part of our safety.
mm.
We need to be part of a community in order to thrive and survive.
Yeah.
uh, so I see that these 2 things, like I learned about them in relation to my health, but when you're an entrepreneur, you're constantly pushing
Mm,
the boundaries, you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, and you're doing things like speaking, for
yeah.
example, on a podcast. And as somebody who's a little bit more introverted or even ambiverted, this isn't something that comes naturally to me.
Mm,
I mean, it does in a sense, but like being on camera, for example, for me is a little bit of a stretch, but I feel comfortable doing it now because I've had practice and I've trained my brain to realize that whatever we're doing right now is totally safe. There's nothing bad that's going to happen. But when you're first getting started and when you haven't done it enough times, your brain can start like firing and be like, no, 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 this is dangerous. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. Go run
yeah.
away, hide, freeze,
Mhm,
because that's your fight or flight response
mhm,
coming online. When in reality, there is no real danger. I mean,
mhm.
the worst thing that could happen is I could say something wrong,
Yeah.
but what exactly is going to, and we catastrophize too. And we,
Mhm,
especially in the beginning, when we don't have enough like confidence in ourselves, or
mhm,
we haven't had enough experience public speaking or doing things that are outside of our comfort zone,
mhm,
really, then we start like thinking, oh my God, what if I screw up? What if I say
mhm.
something? How are they going to like react to me? Because again, that's touching into the number one, the safety health thing, but also
Mhm.
the community tribe. Because when you're a new
Yes.
business owner, you have to be seen as an expert. And
Mhm.
if you're just getting started, that's kind of hard to
Yeah.
be seen as an expert, even though like the people that I work with, they're service-based business owners,
Mhm.
and like people like me who have multiple years of experience in
Yes.
doing something, and that's
Mhm.
what they're selling. But they don't always like put those 2 things together
Mhm.
and realize that actually I do have a lot of experience in this thing. I just haven't necessarily started a business around it,
Mm.
you know? So it's kind of reframing that. So
Mm.
anyway, those
Yeah.
are the two types of fear that I wanted
Yeah.
to cover.
Yeah, and I love how you've done that, because that just makes so much sense. Like for me, because I worked in on the front line, I was constantly scanning not only for safety, but also to see, okay, like if there was multiple patients, who am I going to go to?
Yeah.
And and then when I worked on wards, I'd do the same thing. Okay, just quickly scan the room. Is there any dangers? Does someone need me straight away? And it's like, that makes so much sense now.
Yeah. So you're like constantly triaging.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even now, I'll just do wherever I walk, I'm constantly aware. And thankfully, I've got the tools and techniques to be aware of that. And the
Yeah.
other thing that you said was about catastrophizing. That's my go-to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a
Mm.
learned behavior because
It
like for
is.
me, I don't know your history, but like since I had a chronic illness for so many years and still really still do, but I can manage it and I
Mm,
can live with it and I feel okay. Like because I am aware of these things
mhm,
now, because I'm aware of the fact that, you know, my go-to is fear or my
mm,
go-to is anxiety. And like my
mhm,
husband has a totally different personality than me and he doesn't go there. And he can
mm,
also see it. He's like, you're catastrophizing. I'm like,
mhm,
yes, you're right. Okay, I need to stop, you know, but
mhm,
I wasn't aware of it for
mhm,
so long before. And the same thing applies to my business. Like I could totally just freak out all the time about anything and then stop myself from doing the thing and procrastinate, or I can just be there with that emotion and
mhm,
like feel it in my body and say, no, I'm okay. Like I, you know, I might feel some things, but I can proceed. And that's kind of one of the
mhm,
tips I wanted to share is like
mhm,
the fight or flight response or this, you know, physiological reaction in your
mhm,
body is a real thing.
mhm,
So it is normal for you to feel like sweaty palms
mhm,
or like start getting hot or your heart starts beating when you're doing something new.
mhm.
Like public speaking is the biggest
Yeah.
example, you know. But that doesn't mean that you're really in danger. Your body just maybe thinks that you are, and there's things you can do to calm that down, like for example breathing. You know, if
Mhm,
you can slow down your breathing and take pause and
mhm,
breathe out,
mhm,
you're changing your physiology and your body naturally, if you do that for a little bit, maybe not just once but even
mhm,
once, like you're slowing down your breathing, and so your
mhm,
body can also slow down and all these other things that are maybe like starting to happen can kind of relax. Or before you do something like public speaking, like do something to distract yourself from this,
mhm.
you know, I watch some like funny reels about like animals because
Yeah.
my husband sends, there was some animal, carry, I don't even know what, like some native animal that I was
Mhm,
looking at in a hot tub that had like water on its head, and it was just stupid, but it made me laugh. And like do
mhm,
something like that before you do something a little bit more scary, because it's changing your state, right? And
mhm,
I didn't make that up either. I think it's Tony Robbins, but you
mhm,
change your state like
mhm.
with different things, and then the scary thing isn't so scary anymore.
Yeah, and I love that tip, because that's one of the things that I love doing. And I on my Facebook page, I've still got Facebook lives that I did when I first started, because I
Yeah.
want to show people this is where I was. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because one of them I'm actually talking about me and my services, and it's like, I'm really passionate about this kind of stuff. And I look back and I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
But
But I
it,
mean, we all
mm,
start from somewhere,
mm.
and that's normal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's another reason that I started podcasting, because I kept doing Facebook Lives, and then I've done webinars and workshops, and I went, you know what? I want to get other people out there. And yes, they may be scary, but I want to be able to hold space for them on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
And it's just, like I'm meeting amazing people like you, and I've just gone, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same about my podcast. So it's really
Mm,
cool to be able to interview other people who are on the
mm,
same journey, or, you
mm,
know, maybe in a different place on their journey, but just
mm.
realizing that I'm not alone
Mm.
and that we've all gone through the same things and when we're building our business.
Yeah, yeah. And that was one beautiful tip. What's some more? Because I mean, that tip's just amazing.
Sure.
So there's more.
Yeah, no, there, I have a whole page I'm looking over here. But the one thing else that I wanted to touch on before I go straight into tips, but the other thing that is happening, in my opinion, when you are launching a business is you are rewriting your identity. So not all of us are aware of this. You eventually become aware of it, but the reason why doing new things in your business can feel scary, can feel uncomfortable, is because you're actively changing your identity. You're moving from something else to an entrepreneur, usually. I mean, unless you have another business, but generally you don't. Like, you're an employee, you're a mom, you're something else. And now you're becoming an entrepreneur. So not only are you learning new things, you're putting yourself out there, but you're also changing the way that you see yourself and also that other people see you in your life. So that's also coming into play. So that can cause internal resistance because you have these identity structures that you've built over a lifetime, and now you're challenging them and you're pushing against the boundaries of what you said you were before or what you thought you were before. And so, like, if you were an employee and now you're an entrepreneur, like, those are two very different ways of being. Or even as a mom and like as a something else and as an entrepreneur, they can feel challenging. And then also you wonder sometimes, or we overanalyze maybe, about what other people will say about us and what if they think what we're saying is accurate, appropriate, that kind of thing. So that's when that whole imposter syndrome, fear of rejection thing comes in. So I just wanted to mention that because that's another big thing that's happening when you launch your business. So tips. So first of all, accept the fear. Like, it's supposed to be there. It's supposed to protect you. Your brain really isn't doing anything wrong. It kind of is, but in a sense, like, it's doing its job, right? It's there to protect you. It senses something in your environment that's new, that's a little bit scary, and it's trying to protect you and turning on this fight or flight response. So it's triggering the fear to keep you safe. But then, as a side note to that tip, you want to actually tell yourself that it's not real. Like, this fear that you're feeling, I mean, you may feel some physiological feelings, but they're not really real, that you're not in any major danger. So you can actually still proceed. And at this point, you may need to talk yourself down a little bit and be like, no, it's okay, I'm safe, and I can move forward. Because you may be thinking some things or telling yourself some things that are associated with that fear, but you're actually safe. And I mentioned the breathing, so that's another good one to do. But one that I didn't mention is like somatic. There's some somatic practices. So to add to the breathing, you can put your hand on your like heart or chest and on your abdomen and breathe in, because then you're basically tuning into your body and actually like feeling the sensation, and that helps it move more quickly through you, because you're actually paying attention to it, which I know is counterintuitive, that most people, when they feel anxiety, they want to escape, right? But you actually do want to feel what's going on, and that'll help you just accept that it's a feeling or a sensation versus something else, right? And the other thing I would mention, because I am a business coach, is when you're choosing your marketing strategies and the things that you're doing, you actually want to be mindful of what your natural personality type is. Because if you are an introverted person, then it may be challenging for you to be online and go live all the time, or be on camera. So you're going to be fighting that a little bit. And so it may be better for you to choose a strategy in the beginning that is more aligned to who you naturally are. So like when I work with introverts, writing blogs, for example, is something that you can do more behind the scenes, and you can take your time, you could edit. It feels safer. But that doesn't mean that you should just like give up all networking and public speaking, because I think that is a good stretch goal for an introvert to get more comfortable with, because obviously those are things that will help you grow your business. So that's one thing, is like, don't try to fight your natural personality, because your natural personality is going to win. unless you train it over time. And so my next tip that's around that is basically start small and give yourself some stretch goals. So for me, like, I maybe went on a smaller podcast before I pitched a bigger one,
Mhm.
or did certain things like on my own website before I tried to
Mhm.
guest post on somebody else's, or things like that. Like go
Mhm.
to a networking event with a couple people before you go to one with 1,000 people, or you'll know based off of what your marketing strategy is, like the
Yeah.
way that you can kind of start small, prove to your brain that you're safe, and then keep
Mhm.
going.
Mhm.
Because it is a retraining your brain that I'm okay in this moment, nothing bad is going to happen to me. And actually, most of the time when you do something scary, you learn that, oh, it wasn't so bad, I can do that again, and
Yeah.
that's what you learn as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
um, do you have more time for more tips? I don't know how
Oh,
much time we
definitely.
have
No,
left.
no, heaps of times, but that just makes so much sense. And I love how you said marketing to your personality, because
Yeah.
there's amazing business coaches out there. Like, I love them. Yet they might say to me, okay, get on TikTok. Well, no, that's just
Yeah.
not me. Like,
Yeah.
that's not me. Yet it could be somebody else. And so I want to hone in on that, is that if a coach tells you, you've got to be on Instagram or you've got to be on Facebook because, you've got to find where your ideal clients are. If you don't want to be there, even if your ideal clients are there, they're not going to be attracted to you because of the way you actually market yourself on there.
Yeah, and I very much agree with that philosophy, because like I've taken a number of business courses to just,
Mhm.
learn myself too, and to grow my business. And there are so many strategies out there that I'm just like, nope.
Mhm.
Like there's so many examples I can give you that I intuitively just knew
Yeah.
that is not for me. And
Mhm.
there were some that I actually did anyway, because I
Mhm.
was like, well, maybe there's something to it. Maybe they know better because they've been doing this longer. And then like very quickly I was like, nope, I was right. I
Yeah.
hate it. Never doing that again. Like one
Mhm.
I'm thinking of is like cold DMing people and like
Oh, yeah.
spamming them and
Yeah.
pitching them immediately. And
Mm.
that's a strategy that people
Mm.
sell entire courses around. And I
Yeah.
bought one of those courses,
Yeah.
and I was like, never doing that again, because I tried it. I gave it an effort,
Mm.
and it's like people would block me. And I was like,
Mhm.
no, of course they would, because
Yeah.
that's what I would do if somebody did
Yeah.
it. So basically, like you have to feel aligned with your
Mhm.
strategy, and it has to feel authentic. Because
Mhm.
if it doesn't, you're not going to show up. You're
Mhm.
not going to have the right energy. And
Mhm.
even if you do show up, it's not going to work
Yeah.
because it's just not you. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, exactly why you need to align your personality, your
Yes.
strengths to your marketing channel.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. um,
These tips are awesome. Keep going. 'Cause
okay, a
I'm
couple more,
learning.
a
I
couple
keep
more.
learning from these interviews. It's so good.
Yeah. So another thing is, because you're changing your identity slowly over
Mm.
time, is also to give yourself some grace, because this
Mm.
can take time. You're rewriting a lot of things in your life,
Mhm.
and the way that you look at yourself and that kind of thing. So be gentle with yourself.
Mhm.
You won't get it right the first time, and that's fine,
Mhm.
because you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So like you said, with your earlier podcast, like I was the same. I don't even want to listen to my first or second podcast, because they probably aren't that great. But it is good, because I mean, every entrepreneur starts there, and
Mm.
it's nobody's a born. I mean, maybe there's some born speakers,
Mm.
but generally people have to get better at it over time. Um, and two last things. So if you can prepare yourself, so like for example, I'm looking over here, I have some notes, like
Mm.
it will make you feel a lot more
Mhm.
grounded, because if you go off on a tangent, or if you
Yeah.
forget what you're talking about, which totally happens,
Mm.
or you get distracted or
Mhm.
something, you can just like glance at your notes and be like, okay, I got it. And I'll give you an example of this that isn't even related to business, but 10 years ago, I think it was, I had been promoted to a director of marketing position at my company, and I was freaked out because I was like 26, something like that. So it was like a big deal, and I
Mhm.
had to give this presentation in front of my entire company. So not everybody was in the room, as some was virtual and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I actually had to give two presentations in one day. And one was my entire marketing plan for the year, including the budget. And then I knew that there were going to be some tough questions asked,
Mhm.
because, people like to ask tough
Yeah.
questions when there's a budget, or
Mhm.
like something important being presented. And I also
Mhm.
knew there were people older than me, and that kind of thing. And then the other presentation was one that I really didn't know anything about. And I basically was told that I had to present this material. I can't even honestly remember what it was about, but I remember it being dry, boring, which, like, a marketing plan isn't very exciting, to be honest. That can be dry and boring. But I remember after I gave those two presentations, and I was scared for both of them, right? Like, because I didn't have a lot of speaking experience then. But I remember one of the sales guys came up to me, a senior, like probably the most senior salesperson in the company at the time. And he said, "Hey, Agatha, like, those presentations were great. The one that you did about your marketing plan and your budget, I could tell that you were so much more confident because you knew it. Like, you didn't even need to look at it. Like, you could answer any question." And that proved to me that if you're prepared, if you know your stuff, like, you're going to do a lot better. And that was material that was way closer to my heart, I guess, because I spent hours creating this marketing plan. Whereas the other one, I really, I reviewed it and I read the document, but clearly was not passionate about it.
Yeah.
So if you can do what you can to prepare yourself or talk about topics that are, near and dear to your heart, then you're going to obviously do better, and it'll feel more natural and be a lot easier. So if you do, and I keep using the example of speaking because that's the most obvious one, but if you do something like that, do it on a topic that you feel aligned with, or that you feel interested in, and that you want to talk about, and you're obviously going to do a better job. And the last tip I'm going to say is to take the focus off of yourself. And this is one I've learned from some business coaches that I've worked with in the past, because basically when we're new and when we're talking about something, we get into that imposter syndrome a little bit, or we can get into that. I'm not going to say everybody does. But when you're in your head and thinking about, how am I going to do, like, what are they going to think about me? You're not going to do a good job. So instead, think about, okay, how can I serve this audience? Or how can I help this person? Or how can I teach them something? And if you come from that place, if you basically come from a place of service, you're going to get out of your head and you're going to really, do a better job and feel more confident, because it's not about what those people think of you. It's more about, what can you share? Like, podcasting is a great example. This is why I like podcasts so much, is because we just have a conversation, but yet somebody who's listening to this can really get something from it. So I'll end there. I know that was a lot.
No, I absolutely love those tips. And I just want to hone back in on the one where you said about preparing, because even if it's not a video or a speech or something, you can actually, and I still do it, I have an outline of what I want my session to look like. Don't necessarily look at it, but it's there just in case I suddenly get, okay, I'm not, not in the right space, or I'm not doing something. What do I actually want? And also looking at the client. Like, I look at the client and I look at their body language. That tells me straight away what's going on. So preparing is great.
Yeah. And there's like a nuance to that, because if I just sat here and like read all of my notes and started, like, it wouldn't be as great. But over time you learn, okay, it's there if I need it. And this is what I've learned through actually becoming a coach and doing that coach training, because when I was first starting coaching, I literally was like, okay, question 1, okay, now question 2, now question 3 for my coaching clients. And now if I do that, then I take away from what we can actually achieve in the moment, and like, I'm not as present. So it's more of it's a safety thing. It's like, okay, my brain knows that it's there if I need to look at it, but really I want to be here and I want to be present to the questions you're asking me, and like actually respond naturally instead of what I've written over here. So there's some nuance to it, but it's more about, knowing in the background that you've got it and you've got the information. And even if you don't say, because I've done enough podcast interviews to know that, like, I don't always touch on every single thing I want to touch on, but it's fine, because people are still getting some value from it.
Exactly. And they are. And again, with preparing, like for these podcasts, as you're saying at the start, I have, because you sent a fantastic bio, then I have that there to read, because it's such a good introduction. So preparing can be really good. And as you said, the more that you get confident, the more that you're able to focus on your client and see what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's so good. And I honestly could talk about this subject for a long time. Like it's actually one of my favorite things because, I was in the healthcare field for 30 years on the front line. Fear was just a natural part of me and all of that. And I've had to learn how to regulate all of that. So that's why I was so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to
Oh,
you.
you're very welcome. And for anyone following along on this beautiful podcast, in the description, I've actually got how you can find Agatha. So please, please go and check her out because I'm not the type I don't believe in competition. There is somebody for everybody. So that's why I really promote, people as much as I can. And for anyone watching, please don't forget to subscribe, to like, to share, to comment, to do all the amazing things that support small businesses. So thank you again, Agatha. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.